In Cars 2, McQueen beats Francesco Bernoulli by a slight margin at Tokyo, and let's not forget he wins on a track that keeps changing every few kilometers. That one stretch of dirt in the Tokyo Grand Prix is doing more work than people realize. However, this race happened in 2011, so if you put McQueen to race a modern-day Formula 1 car from 2026, can he still beat it? First of all, I'm not going to pretend Cars 2 is a documentary about motorsport, but Pixar clearly knew what they were doing with the idea of racing styles. By mixing up the Tokyo course with the dirt and pavement, you can feel the balance of power shift, because the thing about Francesco Bernoulli, Formula 1 cars are a very specific kind of fast. They perform at their very best when the track stays clean and predictable. Smooth tarmac, tight lines, braking points you can trust, and corners you can commit to without constantly asking what the surface is about to do next. They rely on their track knowledge so much, some modern-day F1 racers can identify a circuit just from watching a steering wheel recording alone.
Brazil?
Yes.
Sao Paulo.
Las Vegas?
Yes.
Suzuka?
Correct.
Most of the craft is about carrying speed through corners without wasting anything. That's why F1 circuits are designed the way they are. Heavy braking zones, technical sequences, rapid direction changes, and sections where balance matters as much as raw pace. Meanwhile, NASCAR, and by extension McQueen's DNA, represents a different kind of strength. A stock car is about being consistent, durable, and comfortable when conditions are imperfect, whether that imperfection comes from the surface, the traffic, or even the driver next to you having cheeky intentions. So, if we lift McQueen out of 2011 and drop him into a one-lap showdown against a 2026 Formula 1 car, we're really not asking who's the better driver anymore. We're asking what kind of lap they have to go through. If we're looking at real-world comparisons for this, there are actually tracks that both F1 and NASCAR have raced on, like Circuit of the Americas. However, the gap difference is already outrageous. The NASCAR Cup pole at COTA was 2 minutes 10 seconds by William Byron in 2023. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc around the same circuit is out here doing laps in the 1 minute 36 second range in 2019, the US Grand Prix. So, if you take McQueen and any F1 car and drop them onto a modern F1 style circuit with clean asphalt and no weird surprises, the outcome's pretty straightforward. The F1 car wins, and not by a narrow margin, simply because a one-lap contest is the exact format that rewards what F1 is designed to do. It's basically a qualifying day for them. There's no time for endurance strengths to matter, no long-run tire management, no let the race come to you. It's just executing everything immediately, which is why the Tokyo course is a must in order to have a somewhat fair competition. Even by Cars standards, it's a course that keeps changing the rules mid-lap.
Second, the course itself, and it's like nothing we've ever seen before.
That dirt section alone is what allows McQueen, or really any non-F1 shaped racer, to stay in the conversation, which is arguably the first step to his only realistic path. After all, you can't beat Bernoulli by being faster on clean pavement. But when you introduce dirt, loose sand, uneven texture, anything that breaks predictable grip, any F1 car will lose their advantages. And to be clear, this doesn't magically make McQueen a dominant force, it just narrows the gap. Francesco has to survive the ugly parts without losing too much time. Meanwhile, McQueen has to hang on through the clean parts without getting dusted. So, in a 2026 context, if we keep the one-lap rule and we keep the Cars 2 Grand Prix format, I think the biggest question becomes how much ugly parts do you have to put so that an F1 car can't simply earn it all back on the asphalt? And Tokyo kinda answers that for us. According to the Cars Wiki, the Tokyo Grand Prix consists of 67% asphalt and the rest is 33% dirt. So, even in the movie's unfair track, the majority is still a clean surface. That's why Francesco almost wins anyway. So, if you ask me, I think 50% dirt would be more than enough, right? Jokes aside, I know that sounds like I'm saying F1 cars can't handle dirt, which is true in the broad sense, but it's still not the full picture. I was just emphasizing the fact that arguably, the only honest way for McQueen to win again is if the lap toggles more aggressively. More moments where Francesco has to lift, more moments where he can't fully commit. Aside from the dirt itself, weather is another way to make quick work for it, because you don't even need a storm. Again, I'm not saying F1 cars can't race in the rain. They literally have dedicated treaded tires for it. Intermediates and full wets exist for a reason. In fact, F1 teams need to switch to treaded intermediate or full wet tires when conditions demand it. Dry tires are slicks, and slicks don't have grooves, which is why standing water becomes a genuine problem if you're caught on the wrong tire at the wrong time. With that being said, the real weakness is that wet racing has two limits that don't care how advanced the modern car is: aquaplaning risk and visibility. In simpler words, in a one-lap showdown, the most dangerous version of rain isn't full raining from the start because everybody would make the adjustment. It's the half-wet lap we're talking about. Even though you have the option to switch tires, it just won't be practical since you'd be immediately losing the one-lap race, which is gonna be finished in a few minutes. That's where McQueen's whole imperfect conditions actually excel. He can commit a little sooner while Francesco's forced to leave margin. So, at this point, we've got the two big levers that don't require any special rulebook. Mixed surfaces and messy weather, both of them have the same job to force Francesco to leave margin. But here's another problem. Sudden weather changes aren't something you can control in a race, and any races that include more than 50% dirt track would just outright feel like a rally championship, right? So what else can we properly change to make it even? The obvious answer is changing the rules of the fight. Because if the World Grand Prix format is flexible enough to include dirt, then it's flexible enough to include something even scarier to an F1-style car: chaos. Now, hold on a minute. I know some of you are gonna say, isn't Formula 1 already chaotic enough? Yes, I mean, the 2025 season just proved that with drivers like Piastri and Leclerc on the grid. However, if you've ever watched NASCAR, you already know the dirty secret. Bumping and leaning on the wall is sometimes part of the game. A light bump at the right time can move someone off their line. A push in the right spot can help a car keep momentum. That's basically how they say hi over there. If this one-lap showdown allowed even mild bumping, McQueen suddenly gains a weapon that doesn't exist on a normal F1 circuit. With that being said, it's still tricky to bump a Formula 1 car without damaging it too much. They're not stock cars after all. And what's the most evil rule in all of motorsport? The restart. I mean, the NASCAR restart traffic is just insane. And speaking of McQueen, who could beat the guy that has survived traffic with flying colors since his rookie days? Now, this one technically breaks the one-lap idea, but it's too fun not to mention. Because if McQueen can't beat Francesco on a single lap, maybe the answer is, don't race one lap. Make it 4 hours, make it something closer to endurance. Long races punish small mistakes, overheating tempers. Long races punish any car that needs everything to be perfect all the time. And in the Cars universe, that's a really big deal, because these cars have personalities. Even more, they could talk to each other just fine. Gaslighting is a way to win here. He can win by forcing Francesco into risky decisions. Also, F1 cars would suffer the most in the 400 laps format. They would have to change their tires so often since the soft tires could only last for about 30 to 40 laps, not to mention they had to always be running on full tanks to minimize refueling. Last thing I could think of is adding some pit gimmicks. You could absolutely imagine a format where pit strategy would mess with F1 racing management, like limited tire choices or a pit lane that's awkwardly placed so the fastest car actually loses the most time. McQueen's crew is literally built around fast pit stops as a legacy of Cars 1. That was on par with any of the modern F1 cars' pit stop time. You see, so far, McQueen's win condition is heavily reliant on stacking enough chaos that Francesco can't fully use what makes him faster. But would Francesco ever agree to this? The World Grand Prix only works as a premise because it still feels mostly fair to everyone involved. In a way, Francesco and his team would only agree to race because they deemed it was still winnable with all the dirt, right? I mean, if McQueen suddenly shows up and goes, hey, let's do a race where half the lap is dirt, it's raining, bumping is allowed, and there are 5-lane chaotic restarts, and also, it's 4 hours long. Francesco isn't going to call that a race. He knew it was a setup from the get-go, and he'd be kinda right. So, McQueen can't just propose the most favorable conditions and expect an F1 car to sign the contract. He needs a pitch. Luckily, most racers on cars don't behave like teams with lawyers. They act like it was a one-man game. This is the oldest trick in the book, and it should work on Francesco without any trouble. Or maybe he could trap Francesco in big PR events, right? Francesco did that to McQueen on a live TV show to put him in the Grand Prix. I bet he could do the opposite. Or maybe, just maybe, we stick in the same format a Grand Prix Cars 2 already did, but we let Mater, Holly, and Finn do something from the background to mix some stuff. Now you could have a plot of espionage that actually helped with the race theme, and not the other way around. So what are the odds McQueen actually wins a 2026 F1 car around a lap? On a normal dry F1 circuit, basically 0. On a Cars 2 style Tokyo lap with only one dirt section, still unlikely. McQueen's winning scenario needs multiple disadvantages stacked. More mixed surface, messier grip, and ideally some format chaos that interrupts the perfect rhythm. But then we hit the final wall. The more you stack it in McQueen's favor, the less likely Francesco agrees to race at all. So maybe McQueen's best realistic chance is finding the sweet spot where the race is still respectable enough that Francesco says yes, but ugly enough that the F1 advantage stops being free. If I had to put a number on it, McQueen wins maybe 3 out of 10. So no, Lightning McQueen probably can't beat a 2026 F1 car on a normal lap, but he can beat one on a lap that fights dirty, which is kind of his whole personality actually.